Now that I've seen The Manchurian Candidate, I think it has propelled Liev Schreiber into the role of my favorite crier in all of cinema. And it's not like sobbing. It's just kind of red eyes, like some tears welling up. There's an incredible sadness to it.
It's like manly crying.
Yeah.
It's like he cries, but you can see he doesn't want to cry. But then he has to cry because he's so emotional. And that makes him more vulnerable, but yet so sexy and masculine. It's a funny paradox.
Why don't you kiss him, Big D?
I would. He's a handsome man.
Remember when we first met John McClane? Argyle picked him up from the plane and took him down the Nakatomi Tower at the Christmas party. And the terrorists were overzealous, but it was sweet when they killed Ellis. And with a little help from Alan, John McClane kicked ass.
Welcome back to Chat the Movies, the podcast where we answer the question, were the movies we loved when we were growing up really that good? Have you ever caught yourself thinking, why don't they make movies like they used to? Can you still remember spending your Friday night searching for the perfect movie rental at Blockbuster Video? Do you know what Blockbuster Video is? If you answered yes, then this is the podcast for you. I am one of your hosts, Gene Lyons, and alongside me is my co-host, Big D, Dick Ebert.
Good evening.
And each week we take a look back in time to decide if our favorite films still hold up. The movies we cover are chosen by you, the listeners, who generously commission the films you love. If you like still the movies we have covered, we'll cover one and choose one for yourself. Please visit chatpod.com and have a look. At the end of each podcast, we'll provide you, the audience, with a number of wipes each movie takes to get out of your respective butts. So thank you so much for listening. If you have not already, hit that subscribe button and share with a friend. It's how we help the podcast grow. Additionally, subscribe to our sister podcast, Chat on TV. Review TV series such as Westworld, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, True Detective, Lovecraft Country, and Watchmen. Find all our information and past episodes at chatpod.com/TV. And finally, if you'd like to hang out with us live, follow and subscribe to our Twitch channel, chatpod.com/Twitch, and our YouTube channel where we play video games, host watch parties, and edit this podcast live. All that being said, Big D, what movie are we reviewing tonight?
So, Gene, normally at this point in the podcast, I'll come up with some cryptic way to describe the film and talk about the commissioner, but tonight's film's a little bit different. If you clicked on the link, whether you're a listener of the podcast for a long time or tonight you're giving us our first shot, you already know what movie we're doing. It's for one of our great listener, three-time commissioner, Jose V. And he's asked us to do a political film. So before we dive into this film, our review, our thoughts, anything about tonight's commission, which is the 2004 Manchurian Candidate, let me get one thing out of the way. If you're the type of listener who gets upset anytime Gene or I touch on anything political, politics, online 24-hour cable TV networks, scientific theories, this episode might test your patience. Now, I'm not here, Gene's not here to push an agenda, but with a movie like this, it's about political corruption. It's about foreign influence. It's about billionaires pulling the strings of the United States government. So yeah, some comparisons to the real world events are probably going to sneak into this episode. Don't be surprised. If this is going to ruin your night, feel free, just skip this episode. Go to the next one. Maybe give Roadhouse a try if you're a new listener. This might not be a good gateway into Shab podcasts, but if you can handle a little discussion that might make you feel a little icky, please don't cry woke agenda. Don't ask me to play Gene's social justice warrior music. Stick around. The movie's full of wild stuff, and we think it's relevant today. So that is my disclaimer out of the way. Jose V, Manchurian Candidate, 2004.
Big D, I'm so glad you brought this up because I was trying to think as I was viewing this movie how I would present my thoughts on the Manchurian Candidate without going into relating the events and the themes to the world around us today. This is a movie that is grounded largely in reality with some sci-fi elements, a little bit of the extreme, but for the most part, it is art, right? And as Aristotle said, the aim of art is to represent not the outward appearance of things, but their inward significance. If there's a horror movie, it's meant to make us feel the excitement of fear, right? If there's a romance, it's meant to make us feel squishy inside. If it is a political thriller, it's supposed to make us think about the politics of the world around us. And this is how we are interpreting it. So again, I understand if you don't want to listen to politics, if you listen to this podcast as an escape from the world around you. And I understand, like, we're getting flooded with information all the time. I get it. It's okay to skip this one. I won't be mad about it. But if you do listen, please just keep an open mind and know that we are taking this movie and then expressing the thoughts that it engenders in our minds.
And keep in mind, this was a 1959 novel, originally turned into a 1962 film, then remade in 2004. Dare I say, Gene, this movie and the ideas and the plots of espionage and intrigue, it seems so innocent. It seems like such a far-fetched idea. It's almost as if they were saying, aliens might come down and abduct the president and replace him with a robot. This is Westworld level fucking shit that if they saw today, all this shit just seems so overdramatic.
To explain his commission, Jose wrote in and said, "Hi guys, I believe I am ready to commission my third film with you. I'm actually going to give you two choices just because one of them is actually a 2004 film. My options are The Manchurian Candidate from 2004. This is Denzel Washington at his best. Great film, great actors, and a very engaging story. An excellent adaptation of the original. I don't remember if I saw this at the movies or in TV, but this was one of those films I can watch over and over again. I know this is a 2004 film, but I remember you previously mentioning being willing to review movies up to 2005. I think that was a big deal. The second option was Arlington Road. And of course, Jose, we went with The Manchurian Candidate.
So, Jose, love your choices. Thank you for giving us the option. But to say his best, do you forget Training Day? Do you forget American Gangster? Do you forget some of his later stuff? He's passable in this film. I wouldn't say it's on his top 5.
I like that Jose gives us these eclectic films, though, because a lot of our listeners, I'm looking at you, Frank Falls, they give us movies that fit a certain mold. Jose's all over the place, though, with Lady Hawk, Bowfinger, and The Manchurian Candidate. Varying eras. We got an 80s, a 90s, and a 2000. Varying genres and varying styles. One meant to make us laugh, one meant to make us think, and the other one to wow us at the fantastic abilities of Rutger Hauer. Thank you, Jose.
There is a possibility that maybe he's doing these are some kind of trigger words. Like if we were ever to say Lady Hawk, Bowfinger, Manchurian Candidate, it might snap you into some trance and you might go back to your subversive Iranian ways and you might become a sleeper cell, Gene.
The closed captioning would say mechanical whirring and the lights would get brighter.
Ominous theme.
The Manchurian Candidate is a 2004 psychological thriller based on Richard Condon's 1959 novel of the same name and its 1962 film adaptation. It stars Denzel Washington, Liev Schreiber, Jon Voight, and Meryl Streep. In the 1962 version of the film, the protagonist was captured in the Korean War and brainwashed by the Chinese army in Manchuria. In this film, with the Korean War replaced by the Gulf War, Manchurian is instead used as the name of a sinister multinational company. So Big D, we always ask where you were when you first saw this movie and what your memories are of it. Let's start with you. What do you remember about The Manchurian Candidate?
So this week's film, Gene, I had a Gene Lyons episode. I, in my mind, had mixed up a couple different films because I don't ever remember the first time I watched this all the way through. But I do remember getting it mixed up with Courage Under Fire because both movies have Denzel in a military role investigating it. They're soldiers. They're trying to piece together the story of a combat situation. There's different perspectives. There's this tense, investigation going on. It's a very, very mysterious feel. So I would catch bits and pieces each time it was on cable. And somehow I had blended it together, the story in my head, that I thought The Manchurian Candidate was about Meg Ryan in a military cover-up, which turned out to be a very different Denzel Washington movie mixed together. It's not a pilot and Stolen Valor and whatever, the female pilot. This was different movies, very different movies.
On this one, you and I are suffering from completely opposite problems because while you have seen so many Denzel Washington movies that you're getting it mixed up, I have seen so few. I looked at his entire filmography, and Big D, if you believe it, I've only seen 4 of Denzel Washington's 59 plus movies. 4.
So you went one by one.
Yeah.
What are they?
Trying to remember now. So there was Training Day.
Okay.
And this is 4, not including this one, right? So, there was Training Day. There was, I have to look again. I didn't make a note of which 4
You see
it was.
Glory?
I've seen Glory, yes.
You see Mo Better Blues?
I have not.
Malcolm X?
Nope.
Pelican Brief.
Yes.
Philadelphia.
No.
Crimson Tide.
Yes, that's it.
You have.
That's the
You
four
have.
right there. There
I
we
almost
go.
got
I
you.
haven't
I
even
thought
seen Magnificent Seven.
I thought I was going to trick you. Courage Under Fire.
Nope.
Fallen.
But now I feel like I've seen it because you described it to me.
Not Falling Down, Fallen.
No, I've not seen Fallen. No.
Not John Q or Man Under Fire.
Mm-mm.
Man on Fire.
Man on Fire. Nope. Nope.
No American Gangster.
Nope.
Wow. Safe House.
Nope. Never seen it.
What about Flight, where he plays the drunk pilot?
No. I thought that was Tom Hanks. No, that's when he played Sully.
No, that's Sully. Sully was not drunk.
No,
Don't
not
besmirch
drunk.
that man. He's a national treasure.
And that's the one where he says, "I'm the pilot now," right?
Yeah, exactly.
No,
yes.
okay. No, but
You're funny.
but Big D, to be fair, the Manchurian Candidate, both the original and this version, have been on my must-watch list for years. I somehow never got around to it. So, Jose, thank you so much for getting this into my viewing repertoire, and I really enjoyed the film. Let's hit the trailer.
When I sleep, I dream. I don't want to dream. Something happened out there in the desert that night during that mission, and it's not what we thought it was, and it happened on my watch.
We've been down this road with you before, yes?
No, sir. Not this road.
Congressman Shaw!
Sergeant Shaw, you ever dream about Kuwait? Captain Marco!
How much do you actually know about your friend?
I served under him. He was a good man.
That's what the neighbors always say about serial killers.
Somebody put an implant inside me. I got a good feeling they put one in you, too.
You need to get help, Ben.
I'm not crazy, Shaw.
Raymond, this is J.B. Johnston of Manchurian Global.
We're strong supporters.
At a flick of a switch, we can adjust character, change personality.
These are not supposed to exist.
Raymond Prentice Shaw. Listen.
This is a coup. This is rich people funding bad science to put a sleeper in the White House.
Among the shareholders in Manchurian Global, you would find former presidents, supposed kings.
Yeah, I get it. They're big. They're huge.
And you bring me rumors and conjecture.
I started with nightmares, rumors, conjectures. That's a giant leap forward.
Somebody got into our heads. Neurons got exposed and circuits got rewired.
I think you should leave.
What are you doing?
I gotta find out what's gonna happen, where it's gonna happen.
He's delusional.
Watch where you going!
You swore to me that this was fail-safe. No leaks, no glitches. I will do whatever is necessary to protect my son.
We're gonna stop this and take them out.
You don't think they factored you in?
Hello, Captain. Do you remember me?
Man, I want to believe you.
Believe me. Help me. Or shoot me.
Bennett Marco's army unit is ambushed during the Gulf War, and Sergeant First Class Raymond Shaw is awarded the Medal of Honor for single-handedly engaging the enemy and leading all but 2 men to safety. Shaw becomes a U.S. congressman, and his ruthless mother, Eleanor Prentice Shaw, uses her influence to secure his nomination as the vice presidential candidate over Senator Tom Jordan. Shaw is aloof and resents his mother's role in the breakup of his relationship with Senator Jordan's daughter, Jocelyn.
So, Gene, the film opens up with flashbacks to an event that happened in the first Gulf War. We see Denzel Washington's character. We see Liev Schreiber's character. And I thought there was something wrong with my TV. It would play a scene with a song, go to black. Play a scene with a song, go to black. I was watching it on Hoopla, which is the local library's online service. Hoopla. So I thought there was something wrong with my copy. I rewinded it. I watched it again. We have to understand there's going to be multiple tellings of an experience from different perspectives, and it is a non-reliable narrator. It's questionable what's going on, what's happening, and that then leads us into the main plot of the film, which is politics and political machinations and people fighting for power in the presidential elections. And this movie is remembered for Denzel and his performance. But I have to say, Meryl Streep, for me, she controls this film and she directs it in a way that no other performer does. Her character, Eleanor Shaw, She is the mother of the Manchurian Candidate, Ray, and she is manipulative. She's dominating. Whether she's on screen controlling her adult son or her political party, every word she uses is calculated. She felt like a legitimate politician. You could see her on the Hill. You could see her preaching out there in front of Congress or the Senate. She's not just a power-hungry mother. She is a seasoned politician. It felt believable. People are indebted to her. The regular folks are small and afraid, and she doesn't even pretend to play with hope or progress. She is hard selling fear like we see in politics today. And when she's got her party, and they're smart, Gene, they don't show is this Republican or Democratic, because that would immediately turn off half of the viewers of this film. Her party is threatening to not have Raymond become the VP. She goes on this 2 or 3 minute speech to them, and she threatens to split the party in half. She doesn't care if they win. Self-centered politics, doesn't care about making people's lives better. And this felt real. This felt like 2025. You could feel people manipulating. And I just found myself wondering, she's so real. How do people get into politics? Even though I work in it, I work tertiarily in politics, but how do good people go into politics and expect it to stay pure to the ideals they intended?
I think the higher up you go, the worse it gets, right? I do think in local level politics, people do get in it and they're idealistic and they can actually make a difference at their level. But yeah, the higher up you get, the worse it seems to get. And this is not a new phenomenon, by the way. I should point out that from the inception of the nation, right? Basically, I would say post-Jefferson era, it's been a dirty game. It's been a very, very dirty game. And you're right, Big D, a lot of these decisions, a lot of the power struggle, a lot of the paths that are chosen, it's not what's in the best interest of the country necessarily or who's the best fit to lead us. It is a decision made among a few people and it is calculated. In 2016, I remember people saying, is this the best our country can do, right? A neo-lib like Hillary Clinton, no one's really inspired by her, and a game show host like Donald Trump. That out of everybody, 350 million people in the country, the best we could do was Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. I know people in my day-to-day life that I think are more qualified to run a country than those two. In 2020, there was a little bit of hope, right? I'm going to Bernie Sanders rallies. There's Elizabeth Warren, Mayor Pete's out there. The Democratic Party gets everybody's hopes up, and then they snap to the old ways because it was Biden's turn. Biden had paid his dues, right? He was in there. He was the vice president. The logical thing was his ascendancy. He was old enough. He'd been a senator for long enough. This is the guy who tanked Anita Hill, right, to get Clarence Thomas confirmed. That's the banner bearer for the Democratic Party of 2020. And again, we asked, are these the two best people in the country, right? Two guys who are essentially octogenarians, who you would not trust to run a small business you have running the country. And then again, in 2024, okay, you cannot tell me that Kamala Harris and Donald Trump were the most fit to run the country. These are not the two best people in the country. It absolutely is the closed door deals and threats and pressure like Eleanor Shaw is doing, like Meryl Streep is doing, that decide who's on the ballot. And they did an excellent job in a very, very tight package of showing us how this all works out.
And in an effort to try to mend fences with our listeners on the right, listeners on the left, listeners on the far left and right, people in the middle. We are being leveraged, all of us. It is the people with money and power against the small folk. Both use the same tactic. The left gives people fear of, oh, you're going to have your rights taken away. It's nobody is going to honor the differences that make us who we are. The right says, you better watch yourself. You're going to get shot in the street. Some illegal is going to come take your job, and it's not your fault you haven't succeeded. They all choose to leverage fear, but in the end, it's always the smaller folk against the people who have power and have money. And I recently heard a saying that made me really stop and think. They said, if you want to know if you have been brainwashed, it's a simple rule to check. If you can't even understand or conceive of how the opponent's thought process or how they feel could be possibly valid, you have been brainwashed. Because no matter what, I can always try to see the good or the point of the opposing view of any political party.
I won't go that far. I don't think that I can necessarily see the good. But
you can understand.
But I understand the
understand.
thought process. Exactly.
Yes.
So, as an example, right? If somebody has an inclination where they say, I am afraid that we are going to lose our identity as a nation if we're flooded by people who are from outside of the nation who choose not to adopt our traditions and customs and way of life. I get it. I am an Iranian American. My family came to the U.S., and we are the type who assimilate. I love the American way of life. That is my way of life. I really love it. And I would hate if there wasn't a place on earth where I could live that way, right? I get it. It's just the way we're going about it. But you're absolutely right, Big D. It's about positioning the thing you're afraid of in order to get your compliance. And as for, again, the big people versus the little people sort of thing, if you'll indulge me a bit, right? I don't want that to be confused with us both sidesing the issue. I definitely, as everyone knows out there, have a side in this. But I am also not so naive that I don't think that even my party, the Democratic Party, has the best interests of everybody in mind. You go back to icons like FDR, right? Was FDR really interested in helping out the little guy? Or was it that he saw that there was a strong socialist and communist push in the country? And in order to squash that, you co-opt their positions, and then you can kind of kill it. You kill it by absorbing the smallest part of it.
Now, people, keep in mind, this was a book from the 50s and a film in the 60s. So that's the source material. When you watch Shaw's campaign speech, that shit could air today. You could give a politician to give that stump speech, to hit those notes and those points. That should show you this is a game that's been played from as far back as the 50s and before. It's comical. Watch it, folks. Okay, so it's on TV. He's there. He's talking to, it's either some campaign speech or it's like one of the cable shows. And he's talking about all the hot button items. Love the deployed troops. Worried about them on the home front. Worried about military funding. Whether grandma will have to choose between buying food or medicine. All of these talking points are recycled every single election cycle. Every politician, every single one. Don't think yours is special. Every politician pretends to care about the working class American. Nothing ever changes. Very little ever changes. It's just well-crafted political bullshit to get votes. Eleanor, she plays the fear card. And both play the fear card. My parents are afraid that there's going to be a transgender student in Emma's, like in her locker room playing sports with her. That's a legitimate fear for them. I personally worry that Emma, as a 9-year-old, is practicing active shooter drills in her class. So we're all afraid of something different. Eleanor's playing the nuclear threat, the enemy everywhere, even within. The country's in danger. Not because she actually believes it, but because she can control people. She gets all of her party to fall in line. And honestly, it's crazy that in 20 plus years, nothing's changed. This speech, the points. I almost felt like you could have somebody be a script writer right now or a speech writer, and you could take lines from this movie about who the enemy is, about like the taglines they use, like American Power, America Next. It's out of control. Manchurian Candidate feels like it is an active documentary about like the 2020 election.
The camera angles they choose to use, the points where the crowd cheers, the way the TV is covering the speech, this is all very intentional. You're right, Big D. Manchurian Candidate is nailing that reality. Listen, I voted for Kamala Harris, okay? I contributed to her campaign. I voted Democrat in every election since 1998. But that should not be confused with me buying into the bullshit. I hate these speeches. I hate the lofty rhetoric. I hate the phrase, the American people. It's just Americans, man. I hate candidates wrapping themselves in the flag. I don't believe for a second that Hillary Clinton, who I voted for, Kamala Harris, who I voted for, Joe Biden, who I voted for, or Donald Trump, who I did not vote for, know anything about being working class or that they value the everyday American over the wealthy elites, okay? And then there's what you mentioned, Big D, using fear as a justification for everything, right? Justification for spending, justification for restricting rights. And this is a tool that goes back to essentially World War II, right? When we won World War II, we were the only power left standing, and there's the Soviets. So we had to manufacture a communist threat. They weren't actually, listen, the Soviets just lost like 8 million people fighting the Germans. Do you really think they were like really hungry to go take some more land? Dude, they were trying to fucking rebuild.
Well, they were infiltrating Hollywood, Gene. They wanted to
that's
make
what they were doing.
propaganda.
Yeah, you're right.
That's what they were doing. They weren't rebuilding the tanks.
Right.
No, they were trying to make communist sympathetic films.
Yes. And so then the Cold War ends. Okay, woohoo, we won. And we needed something else. So War on Terror, which is like, and they mention it in this film too, like the weirdest phrase when you think about it. We're fighting terror. Like, which means Team America World Police is what it means. We decide what terror is, and then we police the world to make sure that we vanquish terror. That is not to belittle the service members who are out there doing that work and the agents who are out there doing that work. That is not what I'm saying here. What I am saying is that it gives you carte blanche to do a lot of other stuff, right? And we've been caught in that loop for nearly a century.
I mean, look at the Patriot Act. That they extended it. Remember when the Patriot Act was put in place?
Mm-hmm.
That if people should be upset about sacrificing liberties and their privacy and freedom, people should be up in arms. Yes, we have not had a terrorist attack on Homeland since 2001, so we got a good streak going. But the fact that you could extend that wide-ranging national spying program on every single citizen just based on an idea of fear and an attack 24 years ago, that's mind-blowing. But hey, don't get TikTok. Don't get TikTok. TikTok's going to spy on you people.
One of Marco's former soldiers, Al Melvin, is troubled by dreams of the ambush patrol. He shows Marco drawings of his dreams, and Marco also begins to dream about being brainwashed. Marco takes a train to New York City and meets an outgoing supermarket clerk named Rosie, who offers him a place to stay. While showering at her apartment, Marco finds a tiny metallic object in a small lump in his upper back. He accidentally drops it down the bathroom sink after Rosie forces her way into the bathroom. He confronts Shaw and bites into Shaw's back to remove Shaw's implant. Shaw decides not to press charges, and Marco has Shaw's implant analyzed by his friend Delp, who tells him about a Manchurian global project to develop behavior implants. After Delp administers electroconvulsive therapy, Marco begins to have clearer recollections that he was brainwashed during the ambush mission and that he and Shaw were forced to kill the two missing soldiers from his patrol.
So we've already talked about Meryl Streep, Denzel Washington film, great cast, a lot of
Patriot Act, FDR.
What exactly? Trans athletes in Emma's locker room. It's a wide-ranging movie we've done here for. So thank you, Jose, for getting us into that.
Hope you like it.
Yeah, we'll probably get 3 or 4 1-stars and maybe get a couple unsubs, but maybe we'll find somebody who likes just some active, open conversation and thoughts. But like you said, we talked about the performances. There's some big ones that people think of, the Meryl Streep, the Denzel Washington. There's a lot of younger actors who become BA level, major Hollywood actors later on. But the one I have to talk about is Liev Schreiber. You know him from the X-Men series. I loved him in Ray Donovan. Cool fucking dude. He's now on, I think it's a Netflix series called The Perfect Relationship. It's like a Kennedy-esque type family, wealthy, out on in Cape Cod or like Long Island. There's a murder on the beach with a family member. Very great actor. And he plays the role of Ray. In the beginning, I questioned whether he was a younger actor at this point because he's a bit stiff, he's detached, doesn't seem into it or he's getting the role, but that's intentional. As I start to pay attention more, there's layers in his performance. He's got this constant undertone of sadness, and you start to see it breaking through. He has moments where he's an actual human being, where he tries to connect with Jocelyn, his love, the one love of his life that his mother sabotaged. And for that moment, he seems normal. Then you introduce his mom, the dynamic, she comes in, and he's like a little child. He's terrified. He cowers. Even though he is the vice president nominee, he's desperate for her approval. And the tension in every scene between them, it ratchets up and it pays off, I think, in the final act. He doesn't have to give this big speech at the end to tell you what he's learned and how he's fought through this block and what's happened, and he's recalled everything. You know what he's thinking by a single look at Denzel Washington and a nod. It speaks louder than any speech, than any large screaming statement, and it's a performance that sneaks up on you. Without him to play against Denzel, I don't think this movie is what it is, and I don't think people realize how good he was.
Now that I've seen The Manchurian Candidate, I think it has propelled Liev Schreiber into the role of my favorite crier in all of cinema. And it's not like sobbing. It's just kind of red eyes, like some tears welling up. There's an incredible sadness to it.
It's like manly crying.
Yeah.
It's like he cries, but you can see he doesn't want to cry. But then he has to cry because he's so emotional. And that makes him more vulnerable, but yet so sexy and masculine. It's a funny paradox.
Why don't you kiss him, Big D?
I would. He's a handsome man.
But it really, though, it takes an incredible actor to make you witness a man murder a woman, murder a senior citizen, and murder a soldier who is restrained, right? And you still feel sympathy and love for that character. You feel bad for him. He's a monster. And you feel bad for him because it's not his fault. And you can see that pain, like you said, Big D. And the casting is just brilliant because Liev Schreiber he's pretty enough to be that young political star. And as much as we like to say that the looks are not a big deal, listen, look at the guys that we idolize, right? JFK, Barack Obama, on their own, not exceptional politicians, like from a policy standpoint or an accomplishment standpoint, but they were very good looking dudes who had a lot of pizzazz, a lot of riz, as the kids say, right? So he's pretty enough to play that role, but he's not like Brad Pitt territory where you're like, this is unbelievable. No politician looks like that, right? Outstanding work, much better than his half brother Pablo, who was also in this movie and American Gods. And that must have been a weird Thanksgiving dinner that year.
No, but Pablo's a good looking dude.
He's
not
tall.
This level. He's in American Gods. He's a decent looking guy. But do you think? Let's get into the real world here, Gene. Do you think that this has crossed RFK's mind? That he's thinking, listen, I have this little vocal thing. I better be TRT jacked. I should be doing pull ups. I should be showing people how like ripped I am. Is that how he's trying to get people in? He's like, hey, I got to show my abs. Look at my lats.
I think that they just help you sell supplements, and that's his game. So.
Well, he's definitely on TR2. He's definitely on TR2.
No. I'm just saying he's like fucking Liver King, right? You got to get jacked so you can sell the supplements to people who don't know that you need TRT to get to look like that.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. It doesn't really help him, but whatever. You got to respect. You think if every politician did that, we would be one step closer to idiocracy if we're not already there.
This is a comedy podcast. Please don't sue us. Another amazing performance in this film, Big D. No pun intended. I feel like I've been sleeping on Jeffrey Wright. Okay, so the first time I noticed him, I know he's been in a lot of movies. The first time I noticed him was in Westworld. And he's just terrific in these sci-fi roles. He's never loud, or I wouldn't even qualify him as creepy, but he can do weird things. There's something simultaneously broken and comforting about his performances, whether it's Bernard in Westworld or Al Melvin here in Manchurian Candidate. And I felt so much sympathy for his character. I was honestly more concerned with Al's welfare than any other character in the movie.
But where the hell was this performance in Westworld? Season 2, Bernard has like that reset. He's got a corrupt memory of what happened. He's trying to put it together. He seemed less believable than Al. Al Melvin, the paranoia he felt was real. It was in his head. You could feel it. Maybe, okay, he thought that was too human. I have to do robot. What would robot do?
Spoiler alert.
You think that's what it was?
Yes.
So he actively internalized, what would a synthetic human who had just found his sentience, how would he act different than Al Melvin, a paranoid, brainwashed, Gulf War veteran? He actually ran through those thoughts.
If we ever get Jeffrey Wright on the podcast, I'll be sure to ask him that exact question. Was your inspiration for Bernard basically Al Melvin but robot?
Yeah, we think that now, but like when we get on Louis Hertham from Westworld, when we get Peter Abernathy on here, we ask him questions about what was his role in Murder, She Wrote, and he was the local sheriff. Yeah. That's the shit we get. We're not asking.
He's on to bigger
Wright.
And better things now.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I'll be honest, Big D. At this point in the movie, seeing all the events that were occurring, I was convinced that we were getting a Jacob's Ladder sort of film. I did not think any of this was real. There's a scene where Marco, he pulls the implant from his shoulder and Rosie's trying to get in the bathroom. And just as she comes in, he happens to drop it out of his mouth down the sink. And I was like, oh shit, this guy's losing his mind. That's the point why the evidence keeps disappearing. He doesn't have anything to show Rosie. He looks like a crazy person jamming the knife into the sink. It just doesn't make any sense. If the movie wants to introduce the implant, I'm okay with that. But you've just put a piece of technology out there. I need to know exactly what it does. They never really explain that. More importantly, this implant is in your shoulder for what I'm assuming is years. And I'm thinking, okay, you were missing in the desert for several days. You were ambushed. The army gets you back. I would assume that they're going to do some sort of medical exam because you're in the Gulf War and see if your body is okay. And they might notice a piece of metal stuck in your shoulder.
I think it goes a little further than that. Okay. They're war heroes. So for 3 days, the 24-hour cable news cycle would be, where is the missing platoon? What happened? Mystery in the desert. And it's going to be all these stories. You're going to have all the correspondents running around. They finally find them. They're famous. There's going to be news programs. They're going to come back. And then they start finding holes in their fucking heads. Because these dudes have been bleeding. Their heads are wrapped. They look like someone beat the shit out of them. How are you going to explain to the first paramedics, or the first people who show up, and are like, why are you bleeding from holes randomly around? Were you abducted by aliens? Then next, you inject the chip like a millimeter under the skin in a spot where any loved one, any friend patting you on the back will feel it.
Again, just to reiterate, in case you guys missed it in the plot point, Marco bites it out of Shaw. It's like a zit. He's just popping.
Gene, as a pet guardian, when they inject these chips into your pets, they don't do it right under the skin. No. You put it down so you can't feel it. You can't. This is right there. And there's two types of chips, Gene, that appears. There is the tracking chip, which the crazy, wacky conspiracy QAnon friend is the one who's like, I developed this one back in World War II so they could track people. It's theoretical. And then there's a second type that can actually control you, right? Why would you risk putting the tracking chip in anyone who you plan to, or anyone who you gave the brain chip? Anyone's going to find that. Your sexual partner, Gene, if Sarah's rubbing your shoulder, she'll be like, hey, what the fuck is this pill under your shoulder blade? What is that? Oh, the doctor. Hey, well, I'm checking your shoulder, Gene. You hurt yourself doing Krav Maga. What is this metal object under your skin? Anyone would find it. If your plan was deep, like sleeper cell, put the shit maybe in their ass, put it in their taint, hide it somewhere where no one is going to accidentally find it.
Iraqi ass map.
It's a great place. The taint map.
Marco begins to suspect that he's under surveillance and finds evidence of it in Rosie's handbag. His research on Manchurian Global at the library, by the way, leads him to the name of Dr. Atticus Noyle, a South African geneticist accused of human experimentation. Marco tells Senator Jordan, who confronts the Shaws and connects the implants, Manchurian Global, Desert Storm, Marco, and Shaw's patrol missing for 3 days in the desert, and the subsequent dreams and recollections of the patrol's members. Jordan insists that Shaw withdraw from the campaign, but instead, Eleanor activates Shaw and orders him to kill Jordan. Shaw also drowns Jocelyn when she tries to stop him.
So this is a really, really complex plot they've got going, Gene. It's a lot of moving pieces that have to work perfectly. For this to go off, it's going to be very, very difficult. So, Gene, in a movie that has brainwashing and sleeper cells and like a 20-year plot to handpick someone to be president, the one thing that stretches my suspension of disbelief is how easily a vice presidential candidate can sneak away from a Secret Service detail. Almost like a day after he had been assaulted in his campaign office. He's home. Secret Service should be on high alert. Okay, everybody, we know who the bad guy is. Let's be watching Ray. We'll make sure. These agents should not be leaving him alone for a second. There should be video surveillance. There's already been, let's just say it's an assassination attempt. And then he somehow is able to sneak off. He sneaks off on foot and then goes off to attack and kill a sitting senator and his daughter. What if somebody had seen him? What if somebody said, hey, where did you go? Maybe the Secret Service follows him and then observes him. He was just pinned down, Gene. Marco was nuts, stripped off his clothes, like you said, bit his neck. This would be the time when paranoia and security should be full blown. The fact that the Secret Service let him out of their sight, he was able to murder 2 people and then get back home, that is horseshit. Where's the press outside of his compound? How is this possible, Gene?
Well, nobody cares about the vice president, for one. Like, I don't think anybody's like, where's JD Vance, other than, buying donuts. But
so JD Vance
yeah.
could, let's just say, strip down into his underwear, sneak down the street into a friend's pool,
probably.
Maybe let's just say cook a burger in their barbecue and come back, and nobody would notice.
Where the fuck was Tim Waltz during the last 2 weeks of the campaign? I don't know.
I assume he wasn't strangling an elderly man in his kayak and his daughter.
You know what happens when you assume?
Oh, so he may have
I just assumed Shaw was like, hey, fellas, I got to go bone Jocelyn. Like, they're like, oh, cool. Yeah, we get it. Right? I haven't had a relationship since high school.
Yeah, but then when Jocelyn turns up dead, the Secret Service might have been like, dude, we were just sitting out in front of his house. Maybe we should report this.
More importantly, where the hell was Jordan's security detail? I mean, you alluded to it. This dude just uncovered a conspiracy involving a global cabal, human experimentation, behavior implants, and doesn't think, I don't know, maybe this is dangerous. Maybe I should probably look out for myself on my secluded island while I go kayaking.
Or maybe I do the trope where I have a duplicate envelope that I send off to the newspaper, or I send off to a reporter, that if you don't hear from me in 48 hours, publish this story. He's a fucking politician. He should know the danger. You don't walk into the lion's den and expect you're going to just walk out okay all willy-nilly and go kayaking in the morning without a detail. You're an old fucking guy. You might have a stroke and die on your own.
Also, we say this all the time when we're watching 80s and 90s movies about like cell phones. This is 2004. Cell phones exist. I was surprised Jocelyn didn't like call 911 on the phone while going to see why her dad's kayak had capsized. But
also, this is 2004. Did you see the computer, the browsers, the internet browsers, and the websites he was going to?
At the library.
Right. This isn't today where you can find, let's say, the last 25 years of newspaper articles, white papers, reporting. This is like 2004. It looks like they're on some early version of Yahoo or MSN or what was that fucking the search engine? It was, or Netscape.
Jeeves? Oh, Netscape.
No, this was Netscape level searching. You're not finding any secrets or cracking the case.
And at this point in the movie Big D, we get the full picture of what actually happened to the Lost Patrol. So Marco's been zapped. He knows what's going on. And we learned that they were tortured. They were brainwashed. They were returned to America as sleeper agents. But only 2 were killed. One was shot. One was strangled by Marco and Shaw, respectively, presumably as a way to make sure that they were fully conditioned. But the plan seems to be that Shaw becomes president when Marco assassinates the president-elect. Okay, so you need 2 guys. I don't understand why Manchurian Global would allow a whole squad to return alive. And then they start dying one by one. And like nobody's looking into the mental health of the Lost Patrol and they keep dying, checking in on Raymond, checking in on Marco. This seems like at best an experimental procedure that might not work on everybody. It might not work cleanly. Clearly it does not. So by that rationale, Manchurian Global is playing with fire here. Every soldier that survives is a soldier who could potentially remember what happened and totally blow your conspiracy out of the water.
No, like we know any crime. If you're going to rob a bank, if there's 2 people, somebody's always going to run their fucking mouth. The only way you can keep it quiet is to do it by yourself or eliminate the other people. They're actively making this plot more complex. It's a logistical nightmare. To pull this off, Gene, let's lay it all out. You have to find the perfect soldier. Then you have to find a way to brainwash him in the field and his entire platoon without anybody finding you, right? Then you have to have this perfect soldier who you've already brainwashed rise to political power perfectly. He can't fumble. He can't make a mistake. He can't get a DUI. He can't get in trouble. Then you have to somehow get him away from Secret Service through a hole in his closet and reprogram him again with a complete secret surgery place that you've set up next door.
Another scene that I thought was in his head. People, if you have not seen this movie, he gets a phone call. He goes through the closet. There's a whole operating room attached to his apartment. What?
Now, granted, I know that in Vegas, the shooter was able to bring an arsenal up to his room, right, over a couple days. Sure. But here, they have taken a suite in this hotel and converted it into a full laboratory / surgery center with walls, machines. How that happened under the nose of the hotel and the Secret Service, who were guarding this hotel with the vice president next door. Whatever, I digress, right? You then pull him into this room without the security knowing. You reprogram him again, drill into his head again, activate him. There's easier ways to do this, Gene. Why are you going through this? If your goal is to control a politician, you don't need sci-fi. You don't need a chip in their brain. Where does it all start? What do people want? You don't need hypnosis and surgery or mind control. Just give them money. Say, hey, donate to my PAC and I'll vote the way you want. Give me an island. Do anything. There's a lot of easier ways. And that's why this movie is so cute. The idea that in order to buy a politician, you needed to build this like 20-year-old perfect sleeper cell. No, just corrupt them, blackmail them. It's so much easier.
Could you imagine if Arthur didn't win the presidency? Like, they can't control the election. What if he didn't win? Like, you just wasted a whole lot of time. And maybe the backup plan was to get Shaw on like the Ways and Means Committee, and Manchurian Global would be like, all right, good enough.
Maybe there's like 45 of them. There's a whole bunch of Manchurian options. How do we know? We didn't know, that Marco necessarily was programmed. Maybe there's a whole bunch of other options.
Manchurian buffet. When Marco confronts Rosie, she reveals that she works for the FBI and has been following him undercover. Having found an implant in Melvin, who, like all the other members of Shaw's and Marco's patrol, died mysteriously, the FBI arranges a meeting between Marco and Shaw to convince them they were brainwashed under an assassination plot, which takes place just as Governor Arthur and Shaw win the White House. Shaw receives a phone call intended for Marco from Eleanor, and by using trigger words, she gives Marco the command to assassinate the president-elect so that Shaw will become president. Eleanor admits that she voluntarily gave her son to the brainwashers for the country's benefit.
So, Gene, I appreciated it. Before I started my rewatch, you had given me a heads up. You said, hey, heads up, this is over 2 hours long. So I went into it knowing, hey, 2 hours. Now, normally I don't care about the length of a movie. If a movie deserves to be 2 hours, great. If a movie deserves to be 3, great. If it should be an hour, as long as it is the correct length of the material. But I have to say, not to complain, at some point in the film, Manchurian Candidate, it just starts spinning its wheels. And it's specifically with Marco. He is constantly, for about 25, 30 minutes, he is running around, rambling, incoherent. He's in the library researching. He's finding the scrapbooks from one of his platoon mates. He's running down, shoving it in people's face like a lunatic. Look at me. Look what they're doing. He's screaming to anyone who will listen. He's putting scraps of paper together. He's got this whole crazy new group of people who he's trying to get involved in. If this is truly a conspiracy, shut the fuck up. You're going to get killed. You're telling too many people, right? But it starts to unravel. No one's believing him. But did it need to be 25, 30 minutes legitimate? He's on the train going north and south from like DC to New York at least 10 times, back and forth. You could have cut this down to 5 minutes. You keep the tension, you lose none of the impact. Instead, it drags. The second half, I'm like, all right, get to it. We understand what's going on. We know it's not the Jacob's Ladder situation. Why did they continue to do it?
I think if you pay Denzel's salary, you got to milk that Denzel performance. Like I said earlier in the pod, I am woefully undereducated on Denzel Washington movies. And I had always heard people say this guy is like the god of acting. And after watching this movie, I'm here to say the rumors are true. There's nothing fancy about what he does, but he can be fierce and he can be vulnerable and he can be crazy and he can be stoic and just fully human in his work. And I think they knew that the plot of this movie is wildly implausible, but they've got Denzel Washington, right? So a lesser actor would make the Manchurian Candidate something we laughed at. Denzel, he keeps making it real. He keeps bringing the movie back from the edge of absurdity. But I agree with you, Big D. At the same time, maybe too much of that actually hurts his performance.
No, and I do agree. His performance, it is not one note. There's a slight difference. At the point where he goes to his crazy conspiracy friend, and his friend puts him under, puts a gauze in his mouth, and then zaps the chip. He then wakes up in Central Park. From that point on, he does seem clearer in the head. It does seem as though his performance and his character changes. But then that got me thinking, if he zapped him to clear his head and to free up the memory, how then later on does that chip start to function again, and then they activate him as well? Didn't they fry it?
Yeah, maybe that time would have been better spent explaining to us how each of these components works, right? Because my guess was that it was just the conditioning, right? Because they underwent conditioning as well. But it's like, okay, so some people have a chip in the head, some don't. Some have a chip in the back. Some people are powered by the conditioning and the words work on them. And I think that there was probably more detail to this somewhere that I would like to have it fleshed out rather than train trips back and forth and screaming at people.
Right. And then the crazy conspiracy friend who puts him under says, these are just theoretical. But yet then Denzel's able to, in the public library, to find a schematic and a news report about that chip. That calls into question the knowledge of the expert. Dude, maybe you just didn't read that South African journal about this doctor, but I felt like they were trying to keep it a mystery. You found yourself wondering, the chip in the back, was it real? Is Denzel having an episode? Is what's really going on? And I thought they played with that a little too much. And that goes into, you remember when we watched recently After Hours, and we talked about the warning signs. When you're meeting a partner, when you're taking somebody home, what are the warning signs to where you just say, oh, nope, time to go, gotta go. In After Hours, we decided it was when the girl you're trying to sleep with, she has pills for burns, and you find out that her ex-husband had raped her in the room. She had burned herself, and then the roommate is trying to paper mache somebody nude, and that's the time you cut out here. But Rosie, she picks up Marco from the train and takes her back to her cousin's house. So Denzel, he's an okay-looking guy, right? But he's a little bit older than Rosie. Right away, there are red flags. I know there's some bullshit up with Rosie. Rosie's not trying to sleep with him. You're not trying to fool me. She takes him home. I'm going to give you a place to shower. He's in the bathroom like, knocking shit down, knocking over the shelf. You hear shit like, metal hitting the floor. And Rosie's like, oh, you okay in there? You okay? She then opens the door. This fucking crazed wild man is standing there, a bloody knife in his hand, his shoulder cut open, and he's screaming, did you see it? Did you see it? It went down the drain. Tell me, did you see it? This is the point where I'm like, if this is a normal person, if Rosie truly was a passenger on the train who had said paper or plastic, her survival instincts kick in right away. She says, get your crazy ass out of my fucking house. But the moment she's like, it's okay, sit down, I understand. I knew she was a plant. I knew there was no reveal that you could show me that she was involved in this. No normal person would have understood anything that this man had done.
While we're on the topic, why is Major Marco taking a shower at her house? It's not like he's homeless. It's not like he's been thrown out of his home. He is an army major. He has a salary at this point in the film. Where was he planning on showering if he hadn't run into Rosie on the train? Does he not have a hotel reservation? Does he not have a train back to Washington? Does he just accept women's offers for showers at their homes at random?
And she said, freshen up. What is he, homeless? And say he did misinterpret this and came back and tried to fuck her. Would Rosie have slept with him to keep the ruse going?
Yeah, I mean, it's Denzel Washington. She's stuck on that weird pinky finger.
And then in the end, this shit's coming out in some investigation. They're going to be like, okay, so wait, hold on. You lured the potential assassin into a fake home that you said was your cousin's, and then you offered him a place to freshen up, and you had sex with him. They're going to be like, hold on. We need to dismantle the DOJ and the FBI. That's what we're going to do. DOJ. We're going to fucking dismantle them.
When Marco takes aim at the president-elect from a hidden sniper perch, Shaw deliberately places himself between the entranced Marco and the president-elect. As Rosie rushes through the crowd to find Marco, Shaw looks at the vent where Marco is hiding and nods as a signal for Marco to kill him and his mother. He dances his mother into the marked position where Marco kills them both with a single rifle shot. Marco prepares to kill himself, but Rosie prevents his suicide by wounding him. The FBI frames a deceased Manchurian global contractor as the shooter. Manchurian executives watch in defeat as their entire conspiracy is revealed on television, and Rosie takes Marco to the remote island compound where he was conditioned for closure. So Big D, as you said, watching this movie in 2025, it seems so quaint that you would need to go through all this trouble to get your candidate aligned, essentially with the military-industrial complex, which is what Manchurian Global represents, right? It would have been a lot easier if Manchurian had just offered Shaw a boatload of campaign funds. But we should bear in mind, in 2004, this was 6 years before Citizens United. So apparently back then you had to resort to kidnapping, brainwashing, murder, and implants from South African geneticists.
Today, you don't need to brainwash anybody. Like you said, just donate to a super PAC or invest in the president's cryptocurrency. Just tell them that, hey, here's the wallet. I've already invested in it. Here you can see it. There's so many ways now to bribe that you don't need to do this. It's overcomplicated. Just give a guy an island. That's all it takes. Or maybe put the guy in charge of a made-up department in the government that's going to allow him to write contracts to himself for internet service and electric vehicles.
I just realized, and I hadn't brought this up the whole podcast, like Shaw was on board with everything already. What were they trying to get him to do that he wasn't already doing?
No, and mom was already having some weird relationship. You don't think she could have manipulated her son into doing anything that they wanted?
Yeah.
He would have done it. But going into like the real world shit, what also seems wild is thinking about how little we care about modern assassination attempts. JFK, we still do movies, documentaries, books. We talk about releasing the secret files. People go to like Daily Plaza and they do like, they think maybe like that Kennedy was going to come back. You remember that crazy shit recently? Mm-hmm. Where there's people still analyzing the Zapruder film. What about the recent attempts? There's like barely a blip. That shit happened and the news cycle is so crazy now that it seems like it passed. There were two major attempts on President Trump's life. And still, we don't have definitive answers. How did that crazy fucker get up on that rooftop? How did the Secret Service not identify him? How did that fucker get onto the golf course again and set up into a sniper position? We have just collectively decided to move on. I'm almost convinced, like you see in some of these doomsday films, right? Like a dirty bomb goes off or a nuclear bomb, and you wonder, that will change the world. I'm almost convinced you could set off a nuke in a major world city, and within 6 months, we'd be over it. We'd be like, okay, what's next?
You know, Secret Service just shot a guy like 2 days ago, right?
Where?
Outside the White House.
Oh, the dude who climbed the fence, right?
Yeah.
But I'm just saying.
He had a rifle and a handgun. Like, it wasn't just some dude climbing a fence. Like,
but yeah, normally that would be like a big fucking deal, right?
Be a huge fucking deal. And Big D, I'm no conspiracy theorist, but it is super duper weird that I saw more posts and information about JD Vance fucking sofas and Hunter Biden doing drugs than I did about how that kid was able to get a clear shot at the presidential candidate. And I am no stranger to the news, guys. I am a news junkie. Every morning, it's the first thing I check. I listen to podcasts. I read the newspaper, right? I am on it. And I think that part of it is shortened attention spans. You're absolutely right. I think part of it is also that we will ingest whatever's put in front of us, right? Like when you're on Instagram, when you're on Facebook, when you're on Twitter, when you're on Blue Sky, you're ingesting what's put in front of you. Very few of us are like searching for specific news. And I started to think, imagine if the nightly news, right? If we went back to the nightly news format, people were getting their news, tuning in every night, to CBS or NBC or ABC, and that TV program was just the stories that were in your online feed that day. Nobody would watch that shit. Can you imagine sitting down on the couch and they're like, JD Vance fucked the couch? Like, what?
No, it's fucking crazy. And this goes to what I was saying before. That left and the right, we're being distracted with bullshit fucking stories and important things that you should have a question. And in the past used to get attention, we would see. And that's not the way it is now. But we get to the end here, the movie, Gene. And I don't know if it felt like this for you. It felt a bit odd. It felt like the final scene was an afterthought. It felt like they had to go back and they had to film an addition because Marco gets shot. survive somehow. And then we get the whole like where they're pinning it on the Manchurian Global. They do this you get out the graphic artist with the stylus, and in front of everyone, he's like photoshopping out Denzel Washington and conveniently turning it back into one of the Manchurian, their employees. Bad green screen. Denzel is clearly standing in front of a green screen with the ocean and the sun behind him. And there's a voiceover that gives this vague philosophical message about, in war, there's casualties. This fucking felt like tacked on. Am I completely wrong? There was no clear-cut resolution at the end.
Well, yeah, I mean, so spoiler alert for the original, right? Shaw is the shooter, and he shoots his mom, and then he commits suicide. That's how the movie should fucking end, right? I'm okay with them changing it and making Marco the shooter. That's fine. But the whole thing could have ended so nicely with a gunshot ringing out, fade to black, Soprano style, right? You don't know if Marco shot Shaw, if the Secret Service shot Marco, if Marco shot himself. Like, give us some credit, guys, because this movie, I mean, because you're absolutely right. This ending does feel tacked on. It's all wrapped up. When I gasped when I saw them like do the digital deep fake and put the Manchurian contractor instead of the actual shooter. So the FBI is now in the business of framing people?
Gene, don't get political. You're going to get us a fucking 1-star. Don't do that shit. But you're right. Raymond turns the gun on himself and his stepmother. And then also at the end of the 62 film and the novel, the conspiracy, the deep conspiracy, it stays intact.
Yeah.
There is no justice. Then you get to the 2004 and you have to somehow come up with some miraculous, like, oh, the good guys win. Woo, Manchurian Corporation's going to fail. It gives us this fake like illusion of justice. It's bullshit.
I also want to point out that the time between the assassination attempt and the time that Marco goes, they find the island where he was programmed and stuff. He's still in a sling from being shot. So we're talking like days, maybe weeks after he's shot. They've already cleared everything up, put him on a helicopter, discovered where this place was, and taken him there. Which, by the way, I would be like, no, thank you. I don't need to go back on a fucking helicopter to the island.
No, and Rosie's got some serious some answers she's got to give.
Right?
She spotted him on surveillance, but yet allowed him to enter. She then went into the room screaming his name and said, hey, it's okay, it's okay. She knew he was up there. She willingly allowed the assassin to go up in the perch. She knew where he was. And didn't run, everybody down, we've got a gun, sniper in the fucking vent. She's got to answer for this.
Well, now's the time of the podcast where we give our Shat score for the Manchurian Candidate. The Shat score is our way of telling you how many wipes this movie would take to get off your respective butts. 0 wipes is a perfect movie. It's when you smile, Big D. That's what I live for, when you smile. And 5 wipes is an absolute disaster of a movie. It's when somebody gets in your head with big steel-toe boots, cable cutters, and a chainsaw, and they go to town. I'll go first, Big D. I felt like this movie was a bit long. It was a bit silly. It was a bit far-fetched. But the performances made up for a lot of that. You had some serious firepower in the cast. Denzel, Streep, Wright, Voight, both Schreibers. I'm giving this one 2 wipes.
I think you're too generous. I think it's a little worse than average. You didn't need to stretch the conspiracy to such lengths and have Marco be such a just wild man that would have garnered attention from both sides. But there are moments in this that just feel surreal because they feel so current and just like turning on the TV. One of the most ironic points that I really loved in the film was Al Franken. Al Franken plays a TV reporter interviewing senators and congressmen. Then Al Franken himself was elected to the Senate in 2008 and later forced to resign because of some of the comments he had made about female staffers, I believe. It is a
times, man. Jesus.
Seriously. What did he probably was like objectifying some women. He had to resign. Fuck, today.
He said, look at them Hooters. No.
Today he would probably put out like a gif of like some chick with big tits and say, hey, if she had an OnlyFans account, I wouldn't have to ogle her. You know, some shit like that, and stayed in Congress or stayed in the Senate. What a simpler time, Gene. Simpler time.
Oh, no. Okay. No, he did. He was accused of trying to grope and kiss people. So
trying to grope and kiss, Gene. Did he actually accomplish it?
What? It's still wrong.
Oh, Gene, if I try to kiss you, did I kiss you? If I try to grope you, did I grope you?
You would.
I would. I would grope
fight
you.
it.
Exactly. So
Mother.
So actually she defended it, or whoever was defended themselves. But it's just ironic that he's in this film in that role of a reporter. Later, just fucking finds himself.
If you take anything away from this podcast, just take away the fact that we thought Al Franken was okay in trying to grope and kiss women because he didn't actually grope and kiss women.
No, I'm just saying that's not even anything today. That would be in the news cycle for about 35 minutes.
Yeah, it's not like you said. Anyway,
you could be sucking off Kid Rock in the back of fucking Hamilton, and that's not even going to stay in the fucking news cycle for a day.
That's a mental image I did not need. All right, now with 2 wipes from me and 2 3/4 wipes from Big D, that gives us an average wipe score of 2.375 wipes for 2004's The Manchurian Candidate.
All right, Gene, with a score of 2.375 wipes, that now puts this film alone in the 213 spot, slightly better than Army of Darkness, Empire Records, and Vacation, slightly worse than Hard Bodies, Matilda, and The Warriors. That's a fucking pairing right there.
That's an Italian wedding soup of movies right there. I don't even know what to make of it.
Fucking Matilda and Hard Bodies. I don't know what to say, man.
Wow. Yeah, I don't either. Jose, thanks for letting us let loose a little bit. Guys, if you've listened this far, thank you for your patience. We've said it before. I love when episodes are a little bit off the wall, off the beaten path for us. I love that we come into these things and get some different results each time. This is definitely the most freeform, political, historical podcast we've done. And I'm sure it'll get better next week. Big D, why don't you tell us about it?
Gene, there's only one way to go, and that's up. Looking for his father, who deserted him as a baby, a sailor named Popeye journeys to the port city of Sweet Haven. Popeye befriends an assortment of eccentrics and falls in love with Olive Oil, who already has a suitor, the bully Bluto. Popeye also discovers an abandoned baby, Sweet Pea, whom he raises as his own. It was a different time. But when the spurred Bluto kidnaps Olive and the baby, Popeye takes action with the help of a magical spinach can. Commissioned by Scott H., came out in 1980. And whew, Gene, this is a wild one.
It is. I just watched it tonight, and it's fantastic. Fantastic. And we get the late Robin Williams and the late Shelley Duvall. What a cast. What a cast.
And this won't upset half the country.
And you won't be on this episode to tell us how ugly Shelley Duvall is.
I don't think I ever said she was ugly.
I think if everybody goes back and checks the...
I actually like her body type. I think she's... I do. You know, she's like kind of gangly. She's a little bit awkward.
Kind of gangly? She's very... She's Olive Oil.
I don't think I ever had anything negative to say about her. I've been very free with my love throughout my life. I was equal opportunity.
I think if people go back and listen to the Shining episode, they might find some different takes.
No, I think you have a chip in your head. You've been brainwashed.
It's definitely one on my shoulder.
That actually happened.
Yeah. Well, Scott, my newfound drinking buddy, thank you so much for your commission. Thank you, Jose, for commissioning The Manchurian Candidate. Thank you to all our commissioners who make this podcast possible. That concludes this week's episode of Shat the Movies. Be sure to follow us on social media and share with a friend. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram at Shat the Movies. You can email us, host@shatpod.com. Support the podcast by shopping our Amazon affiliate link, buying our merch, or by commissioning your own movie. Find all information by visiting our website, shatpod.com. Also, check out our sister podcast, Shat on TV. Review TV series such as Lovecraft Country, Westworld, True Detective, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, and Watchmen. Find all information on our website, shatpod.com/TV. And while you're on the website, please leave us a voicemail using the SpeakPipe feature. We'd love to hear from you wherever fine podcasts be found, including Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe. And if you stop by Apple Podcasts, please leave a 5-star review. It helps the podcast grow. On behalf of my co-host, Big D, I'm Gene Lyons. Join us next time for the following movie.
What am I? I'm Popeye, the sailor. And I am what I am, what I am, and I am what I am. And that's all that I am, 'cause I am what I am. You got it? I think so, yeah. And I've got a lot of muscle, and I only got one eye. And I never hurt nobody's, and I'll never tell a lie. Top to me bottoms, from the bottoms to my top. That's the way it is, till the day that I drop. What am I? What am I? I am what I am! Popeye, the sailor. I'm Popeye, the sailor. I am what I am. must trust only, baby. You're a baby. It says here, right there, right?
Robin Williams. Shelley Duvall. In Popeye.
I said fooey, and I mean fooey. Fooey.